medical advice. What would you say to those people?
Well, that was a question. As soon as I presented this information, I was deluged with those questions. And actually, I saw a lot of anxiety on people's behalf and panic when they looked at this. And I don't mean to cause anybody undue distress. I'm certainly not a medical doctor. I'm a lay person that's just started to study this information. So I cannot give medical advice to people. And I would not, being not a medical person, a person who's in the counseling field, be one that I could say that there's never an instance or case where these particular materials serve some purpose. I think that's of some debate in the Christian community if they ever have any purpose at all, but I'm not one to make that decision for other people. There may be a time of real crisis in someone's life, where for a very brief period of time it may be warranted, or if there are certain chemical imbalances, things that actually have a natural cause where those chemicals are restored in as natural a way as possible, I could see motives for that. But for myself personally, I am very, very concerned about these particular chemicals. So it's ongoing, but I would suggest you talk with your doctor. But if you have a spouse or family members, I would ask them, if I was on something like that and the doctor insisted that I needed to take it, I would ask them to look for other side effects with me. I would definitely try to get a long-range plan to get off of them as reasonable as possible, if it could be done, just because of the unknowns and the distrust, and try to see if there's some way to dictate that there's something else psychotic going on or disturbing going on. So, like I said, I'm not in a permission to say everyone should just flush yours down the toilet. They need to go consult their doctor and their family, but I would be much more cautious if I was our listeners in looking for other effects that they have, and really suspect why they are so liberal in prescribing them at first blush versus other means.
Right, and there's all kinds of good information out there on that. I would agree with you that there's some chemical imbalances. I've seen cases of bipolar, in Christians that are absolutely, totally cured by proper medication and things like that. But I would also say that, as you said, you should look for other causes, especially in the antidepressant category. I would also say that it's interesting because people validate them because they work. Let's say their kid is dramatically improved behavior when they take it, and that sort of validation, or like, hey, now I don't have to deal with that problem, is a really hard thing to not do.
Right.
Well, I see all this information, but it worked. So, and I would just caution the people out there about that, because I see that same mentality work in the occult world when people say, well, you're saying it's bad, but this stuff works, and it validates the rest of it because of the fact that it is doing something. And I see the same thing that leads people into all kinds of different types of the occult world based on just them seeing results. And I submit that it's kind of like a carrot on the string sort of lure to get them in. Consider if a lot of this stuff was spiritual in nature, maybe not all of it, but a certain percentage was spiritual in nature, and they were watching you give them these drugs, and all that they would have to do from that perspective is to back off for a little bit, and to let them, the individual, the kid, be normal, and let the drug take the credit, and then knowing all the while that it gets them more of an influence in the long run.
Well, it's a huge money maker. People don't make big money for taking natural means. It's just like war, and that's why I say you never hear about peace profiteers. It's because there's big money to be made in war, and that's why we have a lot of it. There's big money to be made in taking drugs, as opposed to taking something natural you can get easily or locally, or even spiritual, or other kind of means that are non-chemical related. So, some of the other concerns that you brought up. I've read some stuff in some of the occult literature about when they take their paths. And by the way, I would strongly encourage everyone to stay away from it of any manifestation. But some who have done that and have taken this slow path of ascetic lifestyle, hermit-type lifestyle, slow study, what they say are these people that take this left-hand path are people who use drugs to jump over all of their steps they're going to, because it is a quick fix to the occult world. And in fact, that's what they accused Hitler of. Hitler, they had a slow path in the occult societies for him to gain this knowledge, and he took the quick path, first by taking peyote and then other drugs to go to this quick path. And of course, all of that is evil. All of the occult activities apart from God are evil. But even they recognize that drugs were a shortcut, and they're a cheap way to get to a desired state. It may be a cheap emotional state for us, but it also has spiritual implications too. And frankly, nobody knows what the long-term impacts are going to be of this chemical. Now, people, if I had children, I would have to ask myself, why is such a large portion of our society's children and now adults having to be on these chemicals? It's not just a few random children that we found this great technology and miracle that even helps the few kids who have problems come around. Now you've got large portions. I remember a man on an air flight telling me that he had just gone to camp with his kid, and they were there at lunchtime, and they said, "Everybody line up for your drugs." And he said roughly half the kids got up and lined up for their mood-altering drugs that they had. And, I don't think that's really an exaggeration from what I hear. We don't know what that will do to people long term. And if it's such a large case, there's two things going on. One is we have terribly messed up our world biology, our uptake of stuff, and how it's changing our internal biology. And we are a messed up humanity. Or there is a premeditated activity for monetary purposes or spiritual purposes to really promote these drugs much more than what we need. One of the two.
Right. As you mentioned, the money that's made is pretty ridiculous. There's a great film out there that you can find for free online called Making a Killing. Have you ever seen that one?
No, I haven't.
Making a Killing. It's mainly about the serotonin reuptake inhibitors and like the antidepressants and things like that. It really shows that there is, if nothing else, if anything that we said here is untrue, it certainly has the side effect of suicide, and that it is making more money than anybody can know what to do with. And of course, getting everybody to prescribe it like candy certainly isn't hurting that revenue stream. So,
right.
And then of course, I think the suicide is evidence of spiritual activity, demonic activity, because, well, I just see whenever suicide in any case is there, it seems to suggest to me that there is some sort of spiritual, at least capitalizing on a situation at the very least. And that's something that they now admit that was not the case right at first, but that people were settling out of court for murder suicides with Paxil, and now it's widely known that they have to say, okay, no, it wasn't because they were depressed that they killed their family. It was the drug itself that made them kill their family and themselves. So that is now known as a side effect, homicidal and suicidal behavior, which again I would suggest is a part of this.
Anywhere in the world, you can go to futurequake.com. We have all our shows archived. If you click onto the past shows tab, you'll see MP3 files of all of them stored there. But they're all there. If you are in Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, down to the Alabama border, you can listen every day, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. on WNO AM 760 out of Nashville here. And I would love to meet everybody, and my email address is on the front of futurequake.com, and just let me know what you think about this show.
Dr. Future, futurequake.com, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for the pleasure of being here.